and we're going to welcome the panel for Government for Good, System Transformation in K-12, which will bring together leaders in the government and impact space, moderated by the incredible Prachi Windlass of the Dell Foundation. This session, I know, will promise to unveil transformative government initiatives in K-12 education. So I would like to welcome up our panelists.
Hi everyone, good afternoon, and what an exciting day of conversations it has been on education, on quality and higher ed. And in the midst of that excitement, I find myself to be in a very privileged position to be hosting this session because I've had the privilege at the foundation to have worked with each one of you very closely and seen the impact and the scale of the work. And the second privilege is of the uniqueness in such a packed agenda to have the only session which is around government schools and the quality of education in government schools. So definitely promises to be a very exciting agenda. I could not have asked for a better lineup of speakers than the ones I have in the panel today, who have both spent a lot of time doing this work on the ground in terms of the number of years and experience, but I also know in terms of the impact that we have actually created for the people that we've worked for. So I would start with just laying out what would be an interesting and important question to answer through this panel, which I think is top of the mind question for all education entrepreneurs and all not-for-profits, is how to work with the government, how to partner with the government. And there are three parts of it. There is, of course, how do we partner, what are the different models in which we can partner with the government. There is how ready are we to partner with the government, and what are the new and upcoming opportunities in order to do that. So let's start with the model part, which also has a very good representation of what I would say is the model of working with the government. Because I have with me Khushboo, who has worked at Mantra4Change in a very different, yet traditional model of partnering as a not-for-profit with the government, but took a very non-traditional approach in terms of the collaborative approach that they took to bring about the change that they wanted to bring about. And I would love to hear, and it'll be very useful for all of us to say that why collaborative, why not go all in as a single partner. There's a much more direct and insider approach which Shailendra took when he actually jumped in and became an insider change agent, led that change for the schools of Delhi, which has gone on to become a case study nationally, internationally in terms of the impact that they're achieving, but also the extensive partnership, which maybe many in the audience have not even fully heard about, that how did that partnership came about. And a slightly sterner approach, if I were to use that word, Kashyap, of good governance, literally in action through the Samagra approach, which is a governance consulting firm, and the way they partner with the government is that they take a mandate around an improvement of any quality metric. We've partnered with them extensively in education for systemic transformations, and see that, how do you actually work with the government on that mandate, yet be one step removed from the system. So why don't we start with you, Khushboo, you explaining a little bit about why you took this collaborative approach, what was the impact of it, and what did you learn in terms of how others could replicate this approach?
Sure. In fact, it's a wonderful question, because at the core of it, when we were figuring out at Mantra4Change that why should we even work with government, right? That was the first question. So our core mission is enabling school improvement. And when we started thinking for ourselves at a more strategic level to say, hey, how do you enable school improvement at scale? And what does scale look like? And then we realized Indian government runs more than 1 million schools in this country. And then if you are thinking scale, there is nobody else, but you have to work with government to enable school improvement. So for us, it was a very clear choice to say that you have to work with the government. You can't just keep creating parallel system. So once as a team we had that clarity, it became very obvious that we have to start approaching government. Now in this case, two models very specifically that come to my mind is one, when there are certain governments, certain states that have already laid out very clear priorities. They know what they want to show progress on. For example, the state of Delhi or the state of Punjab. When the priority is very clearly, tangibly being laid out, And then as an organization, we feel, yes, this really caters to one of the important areas of school improvement, then we approach the government. And then we say, how might we offer support so that we can do this together? So once that partnership happens, for example, in the state of Punjab, the government wanted to establish schools of excellence. Now, schools of eminence. Now, these are 100+ schools that are to be set up in every constituency, affecting more than 10,000 children in 9 to 12 only. So then, as a partner, when we go in and we say, yes, we will support the government in establishing these, in setting up these schools of eminence, then there are obviously these thematic areas. We are not going to do it alone. There are aspects related to parental participation. There are aspects related to how do we provide more pedagogical, innovative pedagogy inside the classroom. So then also comes the realization that, hey, you can't do it alone. As Mantra4Change, you don't have enough expertise on all these areas. So then the obvious model is, how do you rope in partners? How do you get in partners, create a collective at a state level, where on this particular project itself, more than 10 partners can come together on very thematic focus to support the government. So this becomes one, very easy, because everybody is playing to their strengths. You start realizing that you can do so much more with in so little time, because you don't have to understand the whole, you don't have to gain the technical understanding of so many domains. Now, I would also like to quote another example, another model, so to say. If a state hasn't maybe laid out that explicit, tangible priority, then what do you do? So in that case, we start with a landscaping study, we do a full situation analysis, and then come up with certain recommendations, certain proposals that we take to the government, to the Department of School Education, the institutions. And then we actually co-create the priority areas with the government. And how and why that plays out, maybe later in the panel we may touch upon it. But what the beauty of it is, then it becomes a government's priority. And then again, the previous model plays out where you say, hey, now you have established this. For example, in the state of Bihar, India has been doing Nipun Bharat. So obviously, a lot of organizations are working on Mission FLN, trying to improve the foundational literacy and numeracy. But we said, hey, there are children in middle school too. And by the way, in the state of Bihar, there are more than 60 lakh children in middle school from grade 6 to 8. So it's not that we don't have to work for them, because they are right there in the classroom today. And then we said, hey, maybe there's a need to bring out innovative pedagogy, more project-based learning inside the classroom, because NEP is talking about it. The Bihar government was wanting to do, a lot of things in the pedagogy in the middle school. And that kind of set the common ground to say, can we do a project-based learning across those 30,000+ schools in the state of Bihar? And today we are doing it together. And again, bring out partners.
No, that's outstanding, because both the points that you raised, one is about that priority and whether what we are offering is actually a priority of the client. We never try and go sell to a client what they don't want to buy. And the second thing is about that, how do you create a shared responsibility for it and not, look only for land grab in situations where such opportunities open up. I'd love to now hop on to Shailendra, because I would love to hear both aspects. One, Pratham has done outstanding work over the years. You've led a lot of that work. So personally also, what made you jump in and say, okay, now from inside the system, I will make the change happen. I'm always fascinated with that personal story. But the second thing is, equally importantly, when you went there, it was, again, almost like Delhi opened the partnership gates in a way that I have not seen any other state in the country be able to do that. And yet manage all these partners, get the outcomes out of them, and deliver what the children in our schools deserved. So would love to hear both aspects from you, Shailendra.
So, well, I have this unique experience that I worked in one of the biggest not-for-profit organizations working in the area of education in India. And yet, compared to the scale at which the government operate, that is nothing. So as a result, at one level, my own experience with Pratham working on a big scale has adequately prepared myself to be part of this big elephant called government. But at the same time, the kind of complexity or the issues that the government system faces, there's nobody who can come and say that there is a similar kind of experience that they would be having. So that is a key thing to understand from the government's perspective. But what I would also see, one of the reasons why I made that switch was in non-for-profit, we would often hear this cliche called is there a political will to do something? Because eventually, the kind of impact that the government can make, both good as well as bad, no one else can do that. So as a result, it becomes very important that we have always been looking for the political will. And in Delhi, about 9 years back, we felt that kind of political will. So as a result, my transitioning, moving from non-profit to becoming a part of the government system itself was a manifestation of that political will. And what it actually means is that usually in the government, what we often see is that are you allocating budget? Are you bringing about some new activities to do? These are some of the indicators. Are you conducting teacher training programs? These are all parts. These are all pieces that are there. The political will essentially means something different, something much more than that, how invested the top leadership is. And that is what we saw in Delhi happening. So as a result, there was a big vision of the government itself that they wanted to transform school education, which, by the way, among the government, undercurrent was that it is such a big thing that it cannot be done. I mean, government is incapable of bringing about a very big systemic reform in the school education. So that is why we have had like two kinds of a school system operating always. One would be like the fancy private schools where, which will have more resources, the children from a richer background would be going, and then there would be a government schools which would be providing something for everybody. So this two model existed. Delhi experimented by, say, introducing an era of equality with equity at a scale. So I would say that these 3 points of the triangle was matched. So what essentially happened, not only did the government allocate huge amount of resources, but there was also vision followed by a clear-cut plan for each segment. For example, the teaching learning segment, what is going to happen, what kind of a school infrastructure be prepared, what kind of training and exposure we are going to give to the government school teachers and principals, and how we are going to establish linkage with the community. So all 4 components which comprises the school was basically looked at. And after 5 years of, say, rigorous reforms which started bearing result, again the site was set up for what next. So as a result, we came up with the idea of schools of specialized excellence, where again, not only the expertise of the government to be able to work at the scale was a given factor, but also from private sector, from different agencies who had expertise in different domains were roped in. So a kind of partnership was built by which the strength of the government was leveraged with the innovation of the private sector. Perfect. And that is how we are carrying this journey forward.
Perfect, perfect. I mean, we couldn't have asked for a more well-articulated explanation of, what the strengths are and, how this is a complementary relationship and it should be leveraged. Nitin, if I ask you to take this a little, a bit, take it forward with a bit more color on, you've seen it from the other side where you've, say, helping a government structure these partnerships, right? How do you hold them accountable? Some of the challenges that we faced at the time of procurements and such. So if you were to just give an example of just how you operate very quickly, because I think most people might be familiar with how you operate, but then bring to life some of your support that you provide, especially when a partnership discussion is happening, procurements are happening.
Sure. Maybe I'll just take 2 minutes to also sort of explain the sterner approach, which I would call more of a nuanced and focused approach, because it's a different model of how you work with the government. So Samagra is a 12-year-old governance consulting firm, right? And the mission is really how to help improve the quality of life of citizens through better governance. So while we are domain agnostic, though we do a lot of work in education, health and agri being the other 2 primary sectors, the lever of change and the theory of change is absolutely razor sharp and clear that it is really working with the governments, right? 90-95% of our work is actually working with the state governments. And that's been sort of a learning over the years and after experience. because I think while we're in a federated structure, and of course, national policies play a big part in terms of setting the direction and making funds available, and a lot of implementation happens at the district level, at really the ground level. The sort of granularity or the level where a lot of execution power rests is at the state, right? Because as both Khushboo and Shailendra said, the real value here is at scale, right? And that scale and the power to move that scale rests at the state level, right? There are the empowered sort of departments, the bureaucracy that has the control of the resources, which when maneuvered well can deliver that impact, right? So that's been sort of the core thesis of how we work. And Samagra, as you also said, is really engages not on short-term 2 to 3 month or 6 month strategy pieces. Where it is different is it is really a 2 to 3 year long strategic transformation journey where there is a very clear mandate to take that particular domain from point A to point B over time, right? And there again, what was lovely to hear has already been brought out. Absolutely critical in those two inputs is one, that top-down sort of buy-in. And really, it's not that whether there are budgets or not, it is at the level of the chief minister, at the level of somebody equivalent, is it a state priority, right? That is absolutely critical and is also one of our learnings. So even if it takes more time, Samagra, or we would not want to get into something unless we see very clearly that level of alignment, as well as an empowered bureaucrat. Then once you have that political championship, you also need somebody who can really make the system work and move, right? And the model for Samagra really then is to act as a catalyst, right? And collaborate with definitely the department, because that is where all the resources rest, but also all the other partners on the ground. And the catalyst role starts with really helping very sharply, as you also mentioned, Khushboo, defining what the priority is, how should it be measured, what is it that we are going after, what is the very sharp use case, it can't be something very broad, how will you actually measure it? Then co-creating the roadmap of transformation with all the officials in the department, thinking through it from a very rigorous implementation point of view at the level of districts, and then seeing it through over time, right? Till the time outcomes are achieved, are visible, as can be measured by sort of independent assessments, and also ensuring that there is sustainability, right? Because after that, when the Samagra teams move out, or when our teams move out after 2 or 3 years, we want, which requires a lot of upfront thinking. It can't be an afterthought, right? That how do you ensure in the system through the journey of the 3 years, small wins are being created. Everybody who's in the system is feeling ownership and responsibility for the changes that are happening. And systems and processes are getting created so that the new way of life is embedded, right? Both in the department, and you are seeing the benefit on the ground, in this case for, it would be educational outcomes for children, for example, that you would be working in, right? So all those things come together to sort of make this model work. And this is also one way of sort of working, right?
Yeah. No, thanks for those nuances, because, I mean, of course, clearly across all of them, there has to be political will. The change has to be able to, explain why and how that theory of change will work out, whether it's the 4-part theory or, looking ahead, not dependence on a single partner. So let me move to a slightly provocative question here, because we are all being very nice and partnership-led, is how ready the private sector has been in your experiences when the opportunity actually came. A lot of the conversation which we usually have is that it's hard to partner with the government. It is, procurement is hard, billing is hard, finally receiving the money is hard, the continuity is not there in terms of leadership. But at the same time, we should also assess that how ready are we as the private sector, whether it is the for-profit or our not-for-profit sector, to participate in that scale of change that all of us are discussing. And I have an experience of both good and bad examples when I'm like a recent example from a state where I think the biggest device manufacturer and the biggest network provider in the country came together, and, at a scale of 4 lakh, they cannot provide unguaranteed internet coverage and device protection for 4 lakh children. They cannot. And these are not small-time startups. These are actually, the 2 biggest in those fields. So there is that, how prepared are we to be able to participate at that level, and what should we do in our early years? There are lots of education entrepreneurs here. What should we do in our early years to be able to prepare ourselves?
Okay, I mean, I can attempt an answer on that one. So, I mean, I think in my view, really, and I come before Samagra with an experience at Google and other places from a corporate side of the world as well, right? So I think really for private players looking to work with the government, and I'd love to hear Shailendraji's views on that. But in my mind, I think you have to really see this as a B2B relationship, right? As a long-term relationship that you want to have with an enterprise customer, right? And what that means is that obviously it is not transactional, but even before you get in, you really invest a lot in understanding the partner, what their needs are, what are their constraints, what is it that under which sort of setup is this particular need. Very often the sort of relationship could be, hey, I have this thing, I can offer you this, and you pitch that, right? But the question has to be really, how does it fit in with when you are going and trying to engage with the government in their broader scheme of things. From the government perspective, they would have 100 other priorities as well, and having a deep understanding of what is it that they are ultimately trying to maneuver, how will it be measured, what are the logistics of also working with them, right? The governments have some procedures, but for very good reasons, right? In the way that the procurement has to be done. So understanding that is important. There are equal lessons from the government side also, that how to make it more friendly for private players to participate and how not to run into the mistakes kind of what you are mentioning. But the mental mindset has to be of an enterprise relationship that you are developing for the long term, right? And therefore it starts with really investing in understanding the context, but then staying in touch throughout that overall journey, right? In a regular basis. It's not that once you implemented something and then there is nothing available after that, nothing is visible. What is it that the government really wants? What was most helpful is if there is continuous data that is available to them to monitor how the implementation is going, what the impact is happening on the ground, right? So how do you make sure that is always there? How do you maintain a relationship where you are going back, sharing with them the insights, but then also coming up what more can be used to push the envelope on doing that and stay connected at a human level as well, right? I mean, yeah. I'd love for others to also add more on.
No, I would love Shailendra to add on this and add a anecdote on this outcomes. We recently were seeing, one of the government agencies float an RFP for EdTech procurement, and we insisted that you add something on outcomes, and they did. And the list of qualifying agencies fell from 40 to 2, which actually had some past evidence to show to a very simple ask of saying that, look, I'm going to ask for this many thousand rupees. You tell me for this many thousand rupees, how much improvement in learning outcomes of children are you finally going to deliver? So I don't know, Shailendra, you should share your experience of having gotten so many.
Let me say the same thing as what you said, slightly differently. See, there are two kinds of non-government or private entities that wish to engage with the government. One who wants to help, and the next one wants to sell. So you are coming there either to help or to sell. But eventually, it is that non-government entity which has, and government becomes like a entity which is right there. You cannot wish that away. Okay. I'll give you an example. I mean, in the very formative years when I started working with Pratham, it was a couple of years into the work. And I remember once I went to the office of one education director, and he asked me to wait despite giving appointment. The appointment was for the morning 11 o'clock until 3 o'clock. There was no sign of me being called inside. And I was very frustrated, as normally anybody would be. And after a while, he met, and he just in 5 minutes, he hushed the thing. I came back and told my then boss. And I said, I am very frustrated. Why should I break my head with him? And he said, imagine, forget about him. He's just a gatekeeper. He's there as a gatekeeper. You imagine the child who is going to be benefited by what you intend to do. Imagine the face of that child, and then this wait is worth the while. Because this gatekeeper is not going to let you go there unless you go through this. So have your patience. And I have taken that as a mantra. I'm on the other side of the divide right now, but I don't make people wait. But that is very important. What is it that we want to do? I mean, as you said, governments will have hundreds of priority. I mean, running a school system is not a joke. It's a mammoth task, and every day there are so many challenges that comes. And in between, if somebody comes up with an idea, ki, hey, I want to do that, the person sitting on that chair would imagine, ki, oh, is it my priority or not? So I think the best way for the private sector is to also study that at what point of time, what is it that this system needs? Many a time people come to me to work with Delhi government, but they will have a notion of state machinery for, say, some state which is not as advanced as Delhi. And I really get pissed off. You have not done your homework. What you are coming up, what you are offering, we are 10 steps ahead of that. Correct. So at the same time, you are going to make that same mistake when you will go to any other state. Because the idea that you may be coming up, maybe like this system is not ready for that idea. So I think instead of blaming the government, if we are right there, matching the requirement of the government and have model or solutions for that, people will jump at that. Because in the government sector, they look forward to getting people who are coming to help or even to sell, provided I need that at that point of time. So having a good understanding of what is needed at what point of time is critical in working with the government.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, what you said about not having done the homework, it is often assumed that, not just from the perspective of government, and the unfortunate reality of our school system is that we only have kids from low-income families going to government schools, that anything that you give over there is good enough, but I think there are very advanced school systems.
So just a point. For example, if an ed tech company goes with a model to have something in a school, you have to understand whether there is electricity there or not. So if you do not have the basic infrastructure to be able to absorb that won't work. So that kind of understanding is critical.
Absolutely, absolutely. But also, I think, the other point which you're raising about the cell part, we should come back to what all is there that, government already thinks about buying. Khushboo, let me come back to you on this, what have been your learnings in terms of how can organizations be more ready to take upon the scale challenge? Not the challenge, but the opportunity, I would say. You work with private school entrepreneurs are used to going block by block, school by school, making every single sale happen. You come to a state, you can, with some of our smaller school systems are 10, 15,000 schools. So how do we get ready for that, as an organization?
I think few of the points that already Nitin and Shailendra has spoken about. One is, okay, let me take an example. Start with an example that's on top of my mind. Because of COVID, chatbots became the hot favorite for everybody. For any problem, you have a problem with community participation, parents are not participating, create a chatbot for parents. Teachers are not learning, create a chatbot for teachers. Students are not able to take assessment, create a chatbot for students where they'll be taking assessment. It's like that cliched roaming around with a hammer looking for a nail. Definitely, it's a great solution. But it's just understanding that it's part of a big puzzle. It's a small piece, and there are other pieces that needs to be pulled together, and that understanding will only come when you have studied the government, like what Shailendra was telling. Have we understood that what is the persona of the child that we are trying to cater to? What is the persona of the parent that we are trying to really invest in the education system? Without doing that part of the homework, just jumping at the solution is never going to work. Second, I think one, especially for the non-profit, the lessons that we have learned is, I know Shailendra talked about this physical infrastructure. The government education system, the public education system also has humans, resources, right? There are people, actors in the system. Now, suppose I create a program where I'm saying, hey, coaching really helps. Now, I will demonstrate in some 10 schools or 15 schools with some excellent coaches and with one-to-one mapping with the school. And then I'll do some fabulous RCTs and impact assessment, and it will show that it works. And then I go to a government which has, say, a state like UP, which has more than 1 lakh schools. And I go there and say, hey, I have this fantastic impact assessment report, coaching works. So you have to provide coaching to all your teachers. I'm here to support you. But then when they ask, how will you do that? I'm not ready, because my team size is not enough, right? So can we even design for scale? Scale cannot be an afterthought once you have decided that you have to work with government.
Absolutely.
So it has to be woven into the very fabric, into the very principle of the program design that you have done.
I agree. I know we are running close to our closing time now, so I'll just get quick responses on one question on what are the opportunities to work with the government in terms of specific areas. Now there is NEP, there is this whole digital transformation which is happening, changing parental aspiration on what they want for their children. And I'm sure as government thinks about this and thinks of schools of future, they're thinking of areas where they want to continue to play a role and, leverage their physical infrastructure, leverage their scale, leverage their, social equity. But at the same time, have we said, or are we seeing areas where they're saying we definitely want to go out and partner? So what are the opportunity areas? Let me start with you, Shailendra. What do you see as areas, specific solutions, services?
So I can say from the Delhi's point of view, Delhi government school system, only I can't speak about the whole government system in the country. There are two areas where there's a huge possibility. Like we have created schools of specialized excellence. The idea behind that is that once you have elementary schooling for all children, based on the aptitude and interest of the child, can we mark the pathway for the secondary schooling? And we have so far created 4 major verticals in that. Schools of specialized excellence. One is STEM, another is humanities, third one is performing and visual art, and the fourth one is high-end 21st century skills. Now, based on certain aptitude test, we allot these schools to children. This is just a 2-year-old project. So far, we have set up 56 such schools enrolling about 12,000 children. But over the years, the way we are seeing the school system is going to emerge after the first round of success in Delhi, that we will have one set of government schools called schools of specialized excellence, and the other set of schools would be called schools of applied learning. The children who would not go to any of these schools of specialized excellence will be studying in the regular schools, but in those schools we would be introducing, we have already piloted that, but we would be introducing at least 3 skill subjects compulsorily, so that the child who studies for the 4th year in the last leg of the school system should be able to figure out that what is the direction I am going to take once I get out of the schools. Am I going to go for the higher education, or I am going to build my career in any of the skills that I learned in the schools? So that kind of choice the child should be able to exercise. And we would be looking for new ideas, because as I said, governments are very miser when it comes to, say, thinking beyond what they are doing. So here, we will need new ideas, fresh insights. So any organization, any institutions working in these segments, of course, more details can be taken on the website, or maybe we can have a side conversation. But this is where we would welcome institutions and organizations to come and partner with Delhi government.
And that's also very thoughtful to say that, okay, I'll ensure that all my children are getting the education, but areas which are industry linked, where, it's hard to keep up with the requirement of the industry, skill-based, these specialized skills that you spoke about, schools of specialized interest areas. These are areas where, we do very well as private sector, and therefore creating that room over there, I think, is an extremely thoughtful exercise by the Delhi government. Nitin, what are you seeing as the opportunities?
I think you asked for point opportunities, so those are endless, I would say. You can pick any sort of stage or step in the entire education sort of life cycle or journey, and there are unsolved problems there. But I'll take a slightly different spin on it, maybe just abstracting it out a little bit. I think what is definitely a given is that your whatever solution you are doing for whatever stage has to be contextual, relevant, and effective, and sort of cost effective for the government at scale, right? Without that, there is no chance, right? But just that is also not enough, right? Because really, if you want to leverage the power of scale and for that to, and get the buy-in from the other side and scale it really, two horizontal problems that I see that have not been really solved, and there are some steps taken on for it, like the availability of data at a level across, right, which can inform the sort of decision making, normalizing any intervention, right? Like this is a consistent set of things that are absolutely needed and required and shared overall. And the second in the same lines is link with outcome improvements. How do you measure improvement on an outcome against a proficiency? Because without that, there is no yardstick for the government to, not even an input yardstick if you don't even have data, and not even an output yardstick if you don't have the outcomes, a standardized way of sort of looking at outcomes. Once you have these three, so the effective, the contextual, relevant, cost-effective solution, and combined with these two, that at a thematic level, I think would sort of is the need that we are missing.
Thanks, Nitin. Khushboo, you spoke about FLN and other things that you're seeing in Punjab. Any specific ideas?
Specific, I think NEP is laden with opportunities. And I think policy has just laid out some of the very fantastic vision, but it has to be implemented. That means solutions have to be shaped. Right from your, Nitin talked about data. Central government is already working on this idea of VSK. All of us wanted, really wish that government will start talking data, and now it has started talking data. The first step of that journey has been taken. So how to make that dashboard more, as a single source of truth, more alive, more dynamic. A lot of data-related, innovations can be now brought to the government. Second, what comes to my mind is NEP talks about NPST, the National Professional Standards for Teachers. I mean, for those of us working in education, we have been talking about why in government schools there's no, performance-based incentive or performance-based promotion. And here is the opportunity where government is talking about it. Now, how do we put it in motion? What are those solutions that will enable NPST to happen? NEP talks about National Mission on Mentoring. We always wanted teachers to have access to mentoring, children to have access to mentoring, and now here policy is talking about it. What would it take to create a solution that will really enable mentoring at scale? And private sector can just, there's enough innovation that today we can take to the government. The good thing is government is open to it because there have been experiences, positive experiences that even government has had with private sector that has opened their doors for people like us. For children itself, I think Shailendra already spoke about skill, how do we build competency-based learning? How do we enable them to better opportunities that's coming out there? I mean, there's so many things. I can't even just open the NEP and see and start underlining.
No, I know there's ample discussion that we can have on the topic. Sierra is here. It's time to close. But I'll just close with this one thought that, we've always said 65% of our children are going to government schools. The number is probably up to 72%. I know 9 states are represented in this very small sample that we have over here of 3 partners who are actually doing outstanding work in the states in which they are working. The 3 messages I will take away as an education entrepreneur or someone who wants to work with the government: be visionary, be bold. Don't water down your solutions just because you're going and working for government schools. And be contextual, be relevant, be effective. Government is asking for data. We should be the one who should step up and provide that. Thank you very much, and please continue the great work. Thanks, Sierra, for the opportunity.